Hello, good morning, good afternoon. Hello, thank you for joining. Mimi, could you please share as well the background for this webinar and the slides? As people enter. Hello, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to the Switch Asia EEB webinar which will aim to take stock on the global agreement on plastics and look at the challenges and lessons for a systemic solution. We have a wonderful set of panelists. First, I'd like to remind ourselves a few housekeeping rules before I pass the floor to our opening guests. So your microphones are muted during this webinar, and you're welcome to raise your hand if you have any questions. You can write them in the chat or in the Q&A box at the bottom, and we will be answering to your questions during the webinar. If time permits, at the end, some of you may be able to speak, but doesn't happen very often. Unfortunately, we have a lot to discuss. And the recording of this webinar will be made available, and you will receive the PowerPoint that we will be presenting by email following this webinar. And now I'd like for us to look perhaps at the agenda of this webinar. So we have first our welcome address from our two partner organizations, Switch Asia and the European Environmental Bureau. Then we have a keynote address by Mr. Feng Wang from United Nations Environment Program, and which then leads to two panel discussions and some time for the Q&A, mainly in the chat. So I'd like now to welcome our opening speakers, Dr. Zenaida Fadeva, perhaps on the next slide. Yes, thank you, Dr. Zenaida Fadeva, and then followed by Ms. Patricia Heidegger. I will be joined as a webinar by Dr. Arab Hobala for panel 1, while I will be moderating panel 2. So please, the floor is yours, Zenaida.
Thank you, Elodie and colleagues. We all see the most recent round of global plastic agreements negotiations made it very clear how complex this issue is. The progress so far falls short of the ambitions many of us expected, but this doesn't mean we pause. Instead, it challenges us to ask what levers can we already use here in our region to keep moving forward. And this is exactly the inspiration for our webinar today. Across Asia and the Pacific, Switch Asia has been building a body of work that responds directly to the treaty unresolved agenda. And many of today's presenters, as well as participants in the virtual cyberspace, are exactly the people with whom we have been working on many of these issues. But let me maybe share a few inspirational examples from which we get knowledge and practice of how to move forward. In Kazakhstan, for example, we supported analysis of plastic policies and developed guidelines on how to transition to a circular plastic economy with focus on extended producer responsibility and secondary material market. This is exactly the type of regulatory backbone the treaty is calling for, though not yet achieved or legislated. In Mongolia, the Sustainable Plastic Recycling Project, which is a grant project, we are working on two elements, policy support and grants. And this project established local collection and recycling hubs, bringing households, MSMEs, and authorities together. It shows how even in dispersed communities, circular systems can be created. And while Mongolia is probably one of the very complicated examples logistically, how this kind of activities could be orchestrated. Cambodia and Myanmar. In Cambodia and Myanmar, Switch Asia projects are working with food vendors and packaging producers to reduce single-use plastics, providing this platform for small businesses and how can they shift practices when given alternatives and also incentives. In Laopedia, a circular business hub for plastic is being pivoted, testing models that can inspire neighboring countries. Also in Laopedia, we have been working with World Bank colleagues to establish the national action plan for plastic waste, single-use plastic waste. China, we contributed to Zero Waste City Roadmap that pulls plastic at the center of urban planning, and that links local reforms to national policy. And beyond policies and pilots, and I can mention many of them with which we were working throughout the years. You know that Switch Asia is a program of EU which is operational as a technical assistance program since 2007, so long range of experiences. So we have been also, of course, engaged in awareness raising, convening dialogues on the plastics challenges, bring governments, business, and communities into one conversation. And now, of course, we are very happy to work with colleagues from EEB in hosting, co-convening this conversation today. So, while global negotiations are still seeking agreement, here we already see the pieces of solution: policy reform, business innovation, community engagement, behavioral change. The question for us today is, how do we leverage those efforts, and which of these experiences can be scaled, connected across borders, or really used to strengthen national or regional actions? And where can the energy of business and or civil society compensate for slow intergovernmental processes? I invite us all to reflect on these leverage points, not to dwell maybe on what negotiations failed to achieve, but that probably needs to be highlighted in order to see how to advance the agenda. But really, it is important to focus on the opportunities we have right now to accelerate circular solutions for plastics in our large region. Thank you, and over to you, Elodie. Look forward to the discussion with you all.
Thank you very much, Zenaida, for that opening. And now I'd like to pass the floor to Ms. Patricia Heidegger, who is the Deputy Secretary General from the European Environmental Bureau. Patricia, the floor is yours.
Yeah, hello everyone. Thank you, Elodie. Thank you for hosting and inviting us to this very timely webinar at this moment in time. So I think it's a great idea to kind of reflect kind of where we can kind of move forward after, how we can move forward with concrete solutions after the negotiations of the Global Plastics Treaty are somewhat stuck. I wanted to share just a few reflections, from the side of environmental organizations that were closely following the process and how we see the way forward. So it's already now kind of more than 3 years back that in March 2022, the UN Environment Assembly took the decision that we should start negotiating a global plastics treaty. And I was in Nairobi at the time when this decision was taken, and it was a very memorable moment in a sense that when the decision was taken, people were kind of, literally celebrating and cheering, and some were even crying because they had been kind of, campaigning and working towards that for many, many years. So it was that moment where, the belief that we could find solutions together for a global challenge, that was possible again. Now, as you said, Zenaida, I mean, reality has shown that, negotiations were very complex, and obviously, there were very different positions. And yeah, before the negotiations ended now in Geneva in August, I mean, the latest draft of that treaty kind of omitted most kind of binding commitments on actually reducing plastic production, and the whole text had shifted towards focusing more on kind of downstream and waste management elements rather than kind of the life cycle approach to plastics, which was at the core of the mandate to start negotiating the treaty in the first place. Another element that we have been highlighting throughout is the need to address hazardous chemicals and additives in plastics, which also kind of scientists and also many countries, many governments actually had highlighted as something that we needed to eliminate from the plastic life cycle. One major concern that was voiced by civil society actors throughout the process was that obviously mostly kind of those countries and also those industry sectors that are either in kind of fossil fuel extraction or the petrochemical industry, they had a very strong interest in the negotiation process. They were very present, and while many other stakeholder groups, including those people representing those communities that are most impacted by plastic pollution, by plastic production, but also by plastic pollution, that those frontline communities were not that visible in the process. I think at some stage, environmental organizations deeply involved in the process also said it's better at this stage to have no treaty than a weak treaty that comes with a lot of loopholes and voluntary measures and very vague targets, as it would kind of give a false sense of progress and could also in a way entrench weaker norms. So I think from the perspective of environmental organizations, the failure at the last negotiation committee is of course deeply disappointing after such a long process that didn't start in March 2022, obviously, but many years before. But it was also not entirely unexpected, and it's the result of pretty sharp divides over ambition and scope. In terms of the way forward, I think it's absolutely correct to say that we need to kind of center as one element of the way forward to focus on solutions that are already there, that are emerging at national level, even at local level, at regional level, including bans of specific plastic products that are particularly harmful, focusing on reuse options, on deposit schemes, on product design regulation, and so on and so forth. These initiatives, even where they only happen at a local level or at a national level, they can continue to help us to push forward. And then in parallel to that, we will at some stage be able to kind of recenter the treaty discussions on kind of the life cycle approach, and also on kind of the question of kind of hazardous substances and polymers of concerns. I think one element that we will also will continue to kind of put center stage is the need also, if we want to develop a global solution, the need for a very strong and clear financial mechanism that's predictable and that's equitable, and that especially includes funding from the developed countries and kind of internalizes a polluter pays approach in any future treaty. Another, and that's the last element that I'm going to mention, another element I think is that we have seen a pretty large number of countries that are willing to move forward with an ambitious treaty. And so we believe that at this stage, a treaty of the willing can be a good way forward. Of course, in an ideal case scenario, we would have found consensus globally. But if some governments are currently unwilling to accept, for instance, binding commitments, a treaty of the willing can enable us to move ahead with higher ambition, to build momentum, to show it's feasible, to demonstrate the standards, and then eventually later on bring more countries in. This is also kind of how we've seen success with other global solutions that did not necessarily start with a consensus, but eventually brought other countries and other stakeholders along. So yeah, so that's a bit our kind of take on the developments in the last months, and I'm curious to hear yeah, other ideas and solutions for the way forward.
Thank you, Patricia, for setting the scene so well by bringing us back to when this idea originated of this treaty and all the different key points that will be part of it or that are in the discussion. And this is a great introduction now to our keynote address, which will be delivered by Mr. Feng Wang, who is Program Officer and Coordinator of the UNEP Plastics Initiative. Hello, Feng.
Hi, thank you very much. Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. Thank you to the Switch Asia team to invite UNEP to speak in this very useful and important event. As UNEP, we have two roles related to plastic pollution. There is a team of the INC Secretariat that's facilitating the negotiation process. And also there's another team that works a lot on the ground to facilitate countries to implement plastic-related work. Unfortunately, today, my colleague in UNEP working on the INC process is not able to attend the webinar. So I will be providing a brief introduction and also an overview from the implementation side by summarizing the experience of the work in countries, cities, and also in region at global level, how we have been learning from doing actually. Hopefully that observation will be useful to also initiate some of the following discussion. As we all know that thanks a lot to all the work related to the INC, as well as many initiatives and work around the topic. In the 5 years, we have seen a lot of the attention, not only in the media, in policy discussion, but also even in school curriculum and in many places. There is a quick proliferation of mentioning and also discussion on the topic of plastic pollution. Thanks also to the growing number of monitoring of plastic pollution in the environment, we have gained a much better understanding on the problem. And also we have seen a lot of the assessment has also reaching out along the plastic value chain and through the life cycle. This means that the more we collect information and data, the better we understand not only the appearance of the problem, but also the root cause of the problem. In the meantime, by observing a lot of the startups, initiative, innovation, as well as policy on the ground, we are also seeing emerging common understanding of solutions. Actually, if we compare today with 5 years ago, I think we can confidently say that the solutions to solve the plastic pollution have been mapped, and those solutions are known. The main question is how to combine different solutions together, but also scale them up in a way that will systematically address the issue. So from those solutions, we understand that there's no one single solution that can tackle the problem, because the plastic pollution problem is very complex, as Patricia and Zinaida have explained in early intervention. This means that we need a mix of policy and business solution together to see also the support from all stakeholders. In the meantime, supported by a lot of the donors, we have seen a lot of partnership on different semantic topics and also on different areas, sometimes in different regions, that rather than working alone, it is very important for us to join forces using the expertise and the strengths from different partners, from different initiatives to work together. And then understanding the problem, but also trying to stay positive by understanding progress is very critical for us to improve the movement and also intervention alongside the situation. And then we also realize that every country is different. Even implementing the same principles or the same approach, that approach or specific approach need to be adapted to the local and national context, and also how to scale them up from pilot places to national level is also critical. In the end, we need to also encourage learning across countries so that we can see how things can be further harmonized or improved in terms of cooperation. So just to conclude that we have seen many pilots, trials, startups, policies being implemented. There's a wide range of very rich learning. Now it's a time to take stock and to see as the next 5 years to 10 years, how we can actually learning from the past positive experience and work together to accelerate the action to solve the problem. Next slide, please. As UNEP, we have been working with partners and also concluded that in order to solve the plastic pollution issues, we will need to work on 6 areas of work. But briefly, that we need to engage with the industry partners to increase their commitment, but also deepen the action on many different actions items. Then that need to be supported by regulatory and policy framework and also enabling environment from regulation perspective. In the end, we also need to see what are the action needed from different actors, how to put them in the kind of coherent manner so that there's clear targets setting, timeline, and also concerted cooperation. There's also need to work a lot on finance, not only on grants, but also on fiscal policies, but also investment support to really de-risk the innovative solution and also scale it up. In terms of also changes, we need a lot of the behavior change from many stakeholders, including not only consumers, but also sharing all the knowledges. Next slide, please. We have been working a lot with many agencies and also countries and also business to see what shall we focus on learning from the past, but also in the next 5 to 10 years. We have seen that at the global level, especially also in Asia Pacific, there has been a lot of work and projects on packaging and single-use plastics. However, only 30 to 40% of the plastic is being used in packaging. This means that we also need to extend our work and also efforts into other sectors, including durable products and sectors, and many other sectors like textile, agriculture, aquaculture, etc. In Asia Pacific, we have a lot of focus in a number of countries that having high consumption of plastic. However, we do think that in order to solve the problem and also seek solution at scale, we need to focus more on least development countries, seed countries, as well as focusing on intervention in countries where there's high level plastic production, consumption, or trade. This means that we need to move from a kind of a small collection of country to larger scale of numbers. And then we also need to provide deeper engagement and also support to a number of areas, also through improved approach. Essentially, what we have seen is that in the last 10 years, there has been a lot of grant-based projects which actually greatly improved the enabling environment, especially from the policy side. However, we see that from investment side, less than 10% is spent on upstream and midstream solutions, which means that most of the investment so far has been spent on recycling and end of life. There is still a lot of needs to use blended finance and also innovative finance to really support a lot of solutions from design to reuse and to many other initiatives that can also trigger the system change. In the end, there are a lot of areas that we think we also need to do better, including redesign our product in most relevant sectors. We have to also introduce business models to rethink the way we use and also consume plastics. Reuse and refill system is still a way to delay the waste generation of plastics and also shift consumer behavior. And also in the end, plastic pollution is not only about waste. There is a relevance to climate, to nature, to toxicity, as well as to our economy and social benefits. So this means that we have to also care for the just transition, especially in a lot of emerging economies and with the informal sector. Next slides. So In the previous slide, I summarized the learning at the global level across different regions. Now let's zoom in a little bit into the Asia Pacific region, because we are speaking in a Switch Asia event. Thanks a lot to the very detailed and very high quality assessment done by OECD at the global level, and also at the regional level. This is a graph that has been taken from the latest publication from OECD on the plastic outlook in Asia Pacific region. The graph shows that there has been a lot of developments in this region by sampling certain countries in the region to look at the policy advancement on different topics. What we can see from the middle graph and the right graph is that a lot of the countries already introducing a good level of measures and policy to work on sorting, collection, and recycling of the plastic waste. However, there is a lot of need to enforce those regulations to improve the sorting efficiency and the recycling rates. The left graph shows on that there is a lot of intention planning and also future work actually shift a lot on the intervention also towards the upstream intervention, focusing on reduction, design, and reuse, including many interesting policy instruments on bans, on design, on EPR, and also on the use of alternative. However, a lot of that regulations are still in the early stage of development or implementation, so we still need to learn a lot from that. Next slide, please. This graph shows the more detailed intervention actually at the upstream side in terms of policy in Asia Pacific countries. We can see that there is still a need to work more on the bans in terms of single-use plastics and also restriction of microplastics and chemicals. But we do see a growing uptake of the promotion of reuse and repair system, use of secondary plastic in new products, and also promotion of alternatives. So we can see that there are many different colors on this chart, which means that there's still a way to learn and grow until we see a lot more greens than red and orange on this graph in terms of the upstream intervention. Next slide, please. This is a summary for downstream intervention. So we can already see that there's a lot of uptake of eco-labels and also taxes related to landfill and incineration. However, there's also a growing interest and also implementation of EPR for packaging and different type of products. So this also sees that compared to upstream intervention, we are seeing more and more faster implementation of measures at the downstream level. So this is a way just to reconfirm, zooming that actions have been taken at the moment, and by learning from so many countries, by taking the similar intervention, I think there's a big chance and opportunity to learn from each other, and also to bring the solution on the same horizon for scale up. Next slide. So just to summarize from a lot of the initiative, project, partnership, and also assessment we have been doing in the last 5 to 10 years in Asia Pacific region, we see that strong legislation and institutional capacity has been put in place, with a lot of countries in the region already develop a different type of national action plan, either working on reducing plastic pollution or circular economy, sometimes on marine litter. And then there are a number of regional platforms and also systems that enabled member states, countries, partners to collaborate with each other to work on collective solution. Then there is a growing application and implementation of EPR system that primarily working on improving the recycling system, but also gradually moving to the areas of recycling, reuse, and also promoting eco-design. And then quite a lot of initiative is working on cleanup, improved collection and sanitary landfill to reduce leakage, as well as with improved public awareness about the issue over time. And also we see, especially in Asia Pacific region, there has been a very good tradition and also culture to actually embrace reuse since 70s, 80s because of the the economy status and also the consuming habit. So there's a lot of potential to continue this reuse and refuel system. Also, there's been a lot of awareness to control and actions against the illegal import and trade of plastic waste. Next slide. Just to look at, we think there are a lot of areas that we already seeing collective and common actions. There is a need to further improve those enforcement of regulations policy, because introducing and developing the legislation is only the step one. We need to engage with stakeholders, especially with the business, to enforce those regulations and also to monitor the progress and adjust the policy as needed. Then still most of the solution is on the downstream, which means that we need to combine the downstream effort with upstream and midstream solutions, ranging from design, restricting problematic and also single-use plastics and also chemical concern, to work more towards recycled content, EPR and reuse system. There's a need to mobilize more finance, not only from the grant side, but also investments and to de-risk solutions in terms of infrastructure and technology along the life cycle of plastics. We still need to strengthen and also enhance our efforts to reduce the leakage of plastic into the environment, and also work very closely with the informal sectors and changing consumer behavior. In the end, the region is very big, so that we're learning from different geographic situation in different countries, as well as socioeconomic conditions, to make sure even if we speak about the same solution, there is a common understanding of the approach, but also a differentiated model to implement in those countries. Next slide. So based on the summary at the global and regional level, as UNEP, we are working very closely with member states, countries, as well as partners to promote solutions along the life cycle. But we focus our intervention especially on upstream and midstream, because this is the area we believe that requires a lot of testing, pilots, and also the effort to scale up. We are designing our project for cross-cutting topics, but also in high-impact sectors, so that we can provide very specific inspiration and experience to different intervention, and also find avenues to scale them up. Last slide, please. So this is just one example how we demonstrate the way UNEP mobilize resources, but also building partnership. Since the beginning of this year, together with other agencies, including WWF, UNIDO, and UNDP, funded by the Global Environment Facility, we have launched a new program that is $100 million to work on solutions in 15 countries across the world. You can see that every color represents a different type of intervention, from policy, from business innovation, from financing and capacity building. We're looking at a short list of common solutions to see, based on those solutions, how can the same solution be differentiated, implemented in different contexts. And then by learning from those countries, we're trying to conclude and also summarize how each of the solutions can be replicated in larger contexts. So in the next 5 to 6 years, we are ready to learn from this program, and we'll be producing a lot of guidance toolbox, as well as case studies by implementing country project in 4 years' time, to really, let's say, demonstrating the effects of fast movements and also implementation on the ground. Together with the partners, we are ready to support and work with all of you to make sure that we are seeing more and more development and more learning towards the hardcore learning experience on the ground, and then to inspire further discussion and also potentially the negotiation. So this is the end of my presentation. And thank you so much, everyone, for coming. And I do hope to listen to more experts after me to debate and also to exchange ideas as the next step. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fen Wang, for this presentation. It was really excellent. Thank you very much. And I will now ask us perhaps to present the panel. Mimi, I'll introduce the panel. As the slide comes up of the panel, I will let you know that Switch Asia has produced in 2024 an overview of the positions of different countries, analyzing what each country was thinking of this plastics agreement, global plastics agreement. So I'll put it in the chat. We had a specific focus on Asia as well. And as I do that, I will introduce panel discussion number 1, which is led by Dr. Arab Hobala, and in which we have the following panelists: Mr. Tobias Danielsen from the European Environment Agency, Ms. Dinara Ajigalieva from the government of Kazakhstan. She's following the negotiations for the government of Kazakhstan. Ms. Pinky Chandran from the Break Free from Plastic movement, the coordinator for the Asia-Pacific region. And finally, yourself, Dr. Feng Wang, you're welcome to join this panel and continue the debate within this panel. So thank you very much. I pass the floor to Dr. Arab Hobala. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, colleagues. And thank you, Feng, for this very comprehensive presentation that shows some optimism in what you are doing and how this can support further negotiation by coming with new innovation, new solution, and scaling them up. Let us deep further in this lessons of the outcome of the recent negotiations and next steps. And considering that a majority of countries are aligned on key elements related to sustainable consumption, production, circularity of plastics, action should not stop because we don't have an agreement. We have to continue that clear. We need to strengthen collective actions, and we need to collaborate with the business sector. A couple of you have raised this issue. Voluntary actions are important, but this is a global problem beyond borders. And we need to get global harmonized legislation across the full life cycle of plastic, and we all dream about that. Let us go deeper in this discussion, and I will start, I will say, global regional level, then national level, then I will get back to Feng since he started. He will be the last one to intervene with an additional question deepening on what you presented and eventually something more. So let me start with Tobias. Thank you very much from European Environment Agency. You have been yourself following the negotiations, attending many of those initiatives. We got short of a global agreement that we hope, we dream for having it pragmatic, implementable to reduce plastics pollution and production and pollution. Upfront in negotiation, we have seen two opponent groups, and this is very clear for everybody. The full-scale life cycle versus the just downstream actions. So what are your takeaway? Are representative of the European Environment Agency, one of the major institutions there from this consultation, and what do you foresee as next step, since the plastic problem will continue if we don't take action quickly? It will become even more complicated, and we need to keep on going with relevant policies and plastics. What's your takeaway from European Environmental Agency? Tobias.
Thank you very much for this question, and thank also to the organizers for having me here. Before I answer, I just want to say that I'm speaking on my own capacity, so I'm not representing any official line here. But yeah, my takeaways is, of course, first of all, it's clear that we not get the result that we all hope for. And I think you rightfully put the gap between the two groups, as you say, we're still too wide on many crucial issues. I think a lot of reasons for that was already outlined by Patricia earlier today. So I think if I would switch to perhaps some of the silver linings, is that while we did not succeed in delivering an agreeable text for all, I think we did succeed in getting a more nuanced understanding of each other's positions. And I think, at least from where I was sitting, there were some pockets of progress. So there were some areas where I felt we had some meaningful progress, and also this nuanced understanding of where they are. And I think both these things will help us as we go forward, and hopefully are able to mitigate some of this gap between the different parties. Another thing is perhaps that these 3 years to forge an agreement on a very complex topic. Maybe some thought this was an easier one, but it's turned out to be a very complex one. With the very opposing positions, it's not a very long time when we compare it to other conventions. And also particularly in this current geopolitical landscape that's somehow not very favorable to developing multilateral environmental agreements. So I think time, we also need to consider that aspect because as you rightfully say, at the end of the day, the stakes are simply too high to leave it. We must push, we must move forward towards a global agreement on plastics, or plastic pollution, and its adverse effects on the environment and on health. And for that, because they are global challenges that feeds into the triple planetary crisis, it requires a global approach. Coming back to the next steps, I think we all need to digest what happened. This was very frustrating for, I'm sure, many parties. So we need to sort of move beyond that and have internal discussions on what should be the next steps. We have an ongoing UN process, and INC 5.3 is still on the table, although we don't know when or where, and also somebody needs to be willing to host. But I think for that to happen, something needs to change in the meantime. So I think none of us are interested, or at least we're not interested, I'm not interested in repeating what happened in Geneva. So I think on some issues, whether it's bilaterals or other meetings, needs to happen so that we can get some kind of assurance that we're not just repeating what happened in Geneva. And of course, we also need to consider alternatives. So if we don't think we can achieve what we want from 5.3, maybe there are other ways of moving forward to get a global agreement on this.
Can I come with a follow-up question? I understand that you are not speaking officially on behalf of the agency or the EU, but the EU generally developed countries have been very active in the High Ambition Coalition and trying to see how to push the elements forward. And there are many initiatives in different countries. Some of them are being supported by the EU, by the way, in different countries, and how to scale innovation, how to push for innovation, how to have replicable actions. What do we need to bridge such initiatives for more impactful collective action while waiting for a treaty? I just remind you, you have been there when the INC chair said there is no path and the path is made by walking. So by doing all those initiatives, those actions, we are walking, we are preparing for the path. What from your perspective can be done more or better in order to ensure that this collective action and variety of innovation can pave the way for a global treaty?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think there's, while we're all waiting for this global agreement to happen, and hopefully it will happen, there are a lot of things that we can already do now. And I think one of these things is to facilitate more cooperation between countries, between different regions. And I think this is already to some extent happening, and I'm sure that you're also involved in this. And this is something that we can support already today. So if we're frustrated in the lack of a global agreement, I think we just need to push and move forward with more regional and country cooperation. And there's a lot of lessons learned. We're facilitating that in our capacity. So we're facilitating already now lessons learned between different countries within the EU. But I'm sure other organizations can do something similar within Asia or between the EU and Asia, because I'm sure there's a lot of lessons we can learn from each other, because this is a complex challenge, and I'm sure we don't have all the answers in any particular region. So a lot of lessons learned is something that we can, and I think these exchanges that we're doing today with different organizations is also something that can be fruitful in that. And this is definitely a path that we should push, and we can push already today.
Thank you very much, Tobias. Let us move to a next panelist, Pinky Chandran, the BFPP coordinator for the Asia Pacific region. We have been focusing, as you see, on the Asia Pacific, even though we're putting it on the context of the global understanding. Some argue that it would have been better to get a weak treaty than no treaty. can the treaty focus more on only or mainly in the first phase on downstream measures, just the use of plastic, which is basically what the other group is asking for, and later get to the upstream measures, production of plastics. So as one of the renegade put it, attempting to climb a hill before aiming to climb a mountain. What are your views on that? What are your takes away on this issue?
So the idea that a weak treaty is better than nothing is just misguided or flawed. Is not just misguided or flawed. I think it's also dangerous, because a weak treaty does not solve the crisis. It entrenches it. It's just like what Patricia mentioned. It creates the illusion of progress while legitimizing inaction. I think it's more like a mirage, a quicksand. It drags us deeper into crisis while pretending to move us forward. So, but first, what does a weak treaty look like? I think it is one that dodges the heart of the problem by avoiding binding rules on production, leaving petrochemicals free to expand unchecked. It remains silent on toxic chemicals, exposing people and ecosystem to poisons. It hides behind voluntary patchwork measures, replicating the failures of past agreement. And a weak treaty offers finance without ambition. It's more voluntary money for voluntary actions rather than binding commitments and predictable funds. And we've seen that Fiji has repeatedly said that it needs to be accessible and predictable funds. I think weak treaty also ignores justice, leaving waste pickers, informal workers, frontline communities without recognition or support. It exports harm. It perpetuates plastic waste trade, propping up false solution like incineration, chemical recycling. It glorifies recycling, doubling down on broken systems instead of scaling reuse models. And also, it also makes governance worse, because it kinds of sidelines rights. It erases the reality that plastic pollution is actually a human rights crisis, and and all the while, the treaty risks being captured by the very industries whose interests lie in delay and denial. So we don't need a treaty for the sake of it. The real question is this: will we remain complicit for the sake of convenience, clinging to the familiar so that we don't disrupt the status quo? Because for too long, the narrative has been reduced to litter, waste, and consumer behavior. But plastic pollution is not a downstream problem. It's a fossil fuel problem. It's a production problem. It's a toxic chemical problem. And pretending otherwise is delusional. So in short, a weak treaty trades ambition for appeasement, and we do not want appeasement, because we are then shifting the burden again to the most vulnerable, leaving the next generation or even within our generation with a deeper and more dangerous crisis. And, in INC 2 in Paris, the then chair closed with a line from Victor Hugo. He said, it's sad to think that the nature speaks and the human mind doesn't listen. And I think nature is speaking through our poisoned rivers, our collapsing biodiversity, our microplastic in our own bloodstreams. The science is not whispering, it's screaming. And yet the governments are flirting with half measures and distractions as if litter and recycling are the entire story. They're not. Because plastic pollution, like I said, is all those things: fossil fuel, production, chemical. So deferring upstream action, and here I want to re-emphasize the word upstream, because when I say upstream, or when we say upstream, we are actually referring to the upstream, because we're talking about it from a life cycle approach. So from the production aspect. And I think it's not pragmatism, it is basically surrender. And I think history also shows us that a weak compromises rarely get stronger once it is embedded in international law. So a downstream treaty only would ignore the sign, deepen injustice by forcing global South communities to manage endless waste, delay urgent actions, and face the production doubling aspect of it. So I think what good is climbing the hill if the mountain is collapsing on us? So waste management alone cannot stem the tide of plastic production, plastic production and pollutions. And I'll stop here.
If you allow me, I want to continue on something to which you referred very clearly, that at the end of the day, plastic is mainly an oil issue. And the cycle upstream level relies on that, and that ending plastic pollution means confronting the fossil fuel interests ahead. And this has been very clear at the last discussion in Geneva, obvious. So what could be done in the context of the climate policies and actions such as the NDCs, if we can link them, to further demonstrate the need to tackle plastic issues from a full-scale systemic perspective?
Okay, so I think I just wanted to, before I start that, I just wanted to tell everyone that the plastic problem isn't a kaleidoscope, because every new turn offers a new isolated perspective. So instead, I would urge everyone to really look at the plastic problem as a tapestry, interconnected, interlinked, and interdependent. And looking at plastic flows holistic from a life cycle perspective always reveals, the increasing politicization towards the latter end of the life cycle, especially concerning plastic and waste. And even when you look at the way, and the often overlooked production of plastic, the reason why I've said it's intrinsically linked to the fossil fuel is because fossil fuel based feedstock constitute 99% of plastic production. The industry consumes approximately 12% of the global oil, a figure projected to rise. And unfortunately, we are in denial. And just take the example of when at the INC there was discussion on emissions, and what happened? Many countries said it's already covered. But when you're saying it's already covered, I would like to actually also draw your attention to a CL report, which really looked at this whole emission problem much more deeply, because then you're basically looking at it from a half. You're not really looking at it like a full lens perspective. So so the impact of ocean plastic and ecosystem, when you're looking at that, there is I agree that there is considerable amount that is not known about greenhouse gas emissions of plastic in the environment. Annual estimates only consider the tiny fraction of ocean plastic found at the surface and do not consider emissions from the missing plastic in the water column or on the seafloor, stranded in the coastlines, or in larger debris, or like fishing gear. So what I'm trying to say is, even when you're really looking at climate policies, we are again calling attention only to waste management. And again, you're really looking at it from a very isolated landfill-based methane approach. But in reality, you're not really looking at methane that gets from the ocean itself. So if we don't really look at connecting the dots, and if we don't really looking at crossing all the T's in this, we'll always get like a half-baked approach to approach to the even to the NDCs. So I think we have to really look at counting plastics in inventories to remove blind spot and enable measurable mitigation. We really need to look at NDCs to include targets and policies that prevent new production capacity and set reduction pathways for virgin polymer output. We really need policy, environment, waste, health, industrial energy, climate policy to prevent any kind of contradictory incentives like subsidizing petrochemicals while pledging emission cuts. It's not enough to really look at decarbonization. Again, when you're looking at finance mobilization, really have to look at positioning plastic reduction as eligible for climate finance. So maybe we have to really look at the climate finance taxonomy again. How are we looking at technology transfer? What does the just transition support look like? How are we defining leakage? Because that's also important. How are we really protecting and sustaining carbon sinks and coastal resilience? I can go on, but I'll stop here.
It's obvious that you can go on. Thank you very much. But definitely you are clearly describing what is at core of the life cycle work and the systemic perspective together with EPR, and we can go also further. So thank you very much for this enlightenment, and I hope that other panelists can go and continue on that. Let's move now. I said global, regional. Let's go now to a national perspective with Mr. Dinara Azigaliyaba, Deputy Head of Project Officer for Central Asia on Climate Change and Green Energy, Central Asia Climate Fund. Mrs. Dinara, let's come to a national perspective. During the INC process, the positions have remained polarized, as you have said it here, between basically two groups. And from Kazakhstan perspective, a balanced and globally harmonized agreement is essential, Could you briefly outline what is your country's position in the INC negotiation, and what do you see as the key lessons from this consultation, and what practical next step should be taken to move the process forward? And if you allow me, I can follow up with another question.
For
Please.
sure. Good afternoon, Mr. Howell and colleagues. So first of all, let me begin with thanking the organizer for the opportunity to participate in today's discussion and share Kazakhstan's view on the global instrument on plastic. So yeah, as you mentioned, having personally being part of the negotiations, so I would like to briefly outline Kazakhstan's key points, and from this perspective, actually share some important points of what we need to take from our view. So I agree with previous speakers that the recent negotiation on the international plastic agreement clearly show how challenging and sensitive this issue is. It was difficult, truly process, but also very important one. Position, as you mentioned, really was often remains polarized. Kazakhstan believes that the future agreement must be both balanced and globally consistent. This is why we share the view, including UNEP colleagues, that countries should already take measures at the national and regional level so that they can later be harmonized with the global instrument. So Kazakhstan supports the development of global instrument on safe and environmentally sound management of plastic in close link with the SDGs, especially goals 12 on responsible consumption and production. So we see several key priorities that countries can already work together right away. It's a promotion of the circular economy, effective waste management, introduction of modern technology, and improvement of product design. Plastic products should be safer and last longer and be easier to recycle. We believe in that, and this is why they recognize that the plastic widely used, including life support sectors such as the healthcare. At the same time, monitoring systems must be developed so that we have objective data and can measure progress. And we believe this is, should be core in the future instruments as well. It's also important that all measures take into account national circumstances, as you mentioned. Also, so the main lessons from the negotiations is clear. Progress is possible only when all voices are respected and when decisions are made openly and by consensus. Its principle is essential for the fairness and legitimacy of the future agreement. It was important that the plastic heard each country, actually parties, heard one another and were willing to make some compromises. It's also important prior to negotiation, even to accelerate the process on agreed on key concepts and definitions. We have observed that without clear on these aspects, negotiation become unnecessarily prolongated. So as for practical steps, Kazakhstan believes that we need to do towards the adaptation of the future documents is set a clear roadmap of the next actions, including during the UNIA 7, speed up the agreement of key terms and definitions to avoid delays, and pay close attention to finance, technical assistance, and technology transfer. But we must also already start taking such measures at the national level to better understand future joint actions. So already at the national level, countries can work on the regulation of certain single-use plastic, including up to a ban. Countries can strengthen monitoring and reporting systems, giving us an objective tool to access progress and begin working on common standards for safe plastic products. Kazakhstan is already to contribute actively to this work. And very important, countries should enhance regional cooperation on the circular economy. For example, following the recent meeting of landlocked developed countries in Turkmenistan, the Central Asian states announced the need to preparation of a global document on this issue. In addition, within the framework of the regional ecological summit to be hosted by Kazakhstan in 2026, our countries are preparing to develop a regional framework document on the promotion of circular economy. So we think such steps at the regional level are crucial for real progress and to be included in the future instrument on plastic. So I will stop here and ready to answer for your question if you have.
Thank you very much. My other question, in fact, is related to the one I asked before to Pinky, and it is because it's related in your title, climate change, green economy, and Central Asia Climate Fund. So my question is very simple. Plastics and climate fossil fuel are very much related. So from your perspective, from a climate perspective, what could be done in the context of policies and actions such as the NDCs, the National Development Contributions, to further demonstrate the need to tackle plastic? How much can we really integrate the plastic also in the other negotiation to have a better advocacy for that from a life cycle perspective? You can reply briefly to that in a couple of minutes. I will appreciate.
Yeah, for sure. I will briefly on that. Since our position actually during the negotiation process was that all circumstances of countries should be taken into account. So it's included also conditions, economic systems, development, environmental change that countries facing right now. And in this perspective, actually, Kazakhstan agree that everyone supposed to follow their own national priorities. And regarding the production stage or other sensitive issue, actually countries like Kazakhstan supposed to introduce this kind of new principles such as ECG and other approaches that align with, as I mentioned, with SDG 12. So including in the NDC as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Let's now just go back to the keynote presenter, Feng Wan. If you just deep a little bit on the issue, we have a couple of minutes to gather more. I want to take from you broader, deeper, better. And if this could be applied, how do you see this applied in the context of supporting the life cycle, the change system scenario, when countries and companies need to cope together with this challenge? So how can the countries and the companies, and which measures could be taken from a broader, deeper, better perspective to make this work?
Thank you, Arab. It's also great to hear the perspective from the expert. So from the implementation side, I think, first of all, it depends a lot on the planning and also the ambition from individual countries or sometimes city level governments, as well as a business. I think all those kind of measures depends on how the problems of the plastic pollution is being analyzed and also being, let's say, communicated, because it's not always about the leakage only. So that's why I think looking into the issues of microplastics, the chemicals, and also even the durability of products, it's good to see the diversity of the issues and impact, and also to extend it to more sectors and to more partners. On the other hand, between the government and the business, it's not only about compliance, so that there's a top-down measure, and then business will come up with measures to just stick to what the policy requires. I think what will be interesting is also for business, especially the forerunner business, to understand and also to figure out what are the opportunities to lead the innovation, and not only for packaging design, but also for product design, and also to innovate the system, so that probably there is a new potential for growth, so that there is a benefit for both economic benefits as well as environmental social benefits. So I think by looking into that, we can learn a lot from a lot of the forerunner work, and to see how they can be scaled up in order to trigger but also accelerate the transformation. As mentioned, that a lot of solutions probably are there in the early stage. How to grow solutions from product prototype, or early pilots to higher level of maturity application. In this process, there need to be support not only from fiscal policy, from the enabling support from the government, but also from, for instance, venture capitals and also further investment. This is where a lot of solutions can be actually encouraged and also supported by the financial sector, together with the efforts from the business and also from the government. And this is where we look forward to see more potential demonstration, but also upscale solution to match the upstream solutions with the downstream recycling and treatment. So that's a way we can actually see transformational change. And this is where we hope to also design more interesting, but also more impactful project and program with many partners. So, so this is a way I see how we can further deepen our work in terms of seeing more and more, let's say, promising developments on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you. Just very briefly on one point, it might be delicate reply, but you just share your views. Support and enhance transformative change would require data. You refer to it in your introduction. Would there be a role for artificial intelligence on that? Do you see a role, positive role of artificial intelligence to help us deliver a better transformative change?
I think it's a very good question, and I was not ready to answer that, but I think in principle, definitely yes, but we need to find, especially, you know, what modality. I think there's a broader tools like blockchain before and, you know, artificial intelligence, but many probably other emerging digital solutions, because I have to say that we still don't know enough or better about the system, how materials and product being designed and being used, and especially when we talk about so many different type of polymers and additives and all those sort of things. And I think we need to know more. And I do think a lot of the now the digital transformation will help us to do more, but still at the end of the day, we need to act on that, and also to build more harmonized system. I think it will improve that, but maybe other speakers will have better insight than me, because I'm not a technical geek or guru on the topic. Thank you.
So maybe it will be taken up by the next panel. So from here, Tobias, Pinky, Dinara, and Fang, thank you very much for your contribution. Very informative, enlightening us, and there is certainly a lot that we can follow on this issue. So thank you a lot. Unless there are specific questions that our colleagues from Switch Asia can raise to the panelists, we can move to the next panel that will be led by Elodie.
Thank you so much, Arab, for leading this panel, and a great dive into the topic. And it was really interesting to hear about the different views from the negotiations themselves, and from all of you who were there and could really listen to the different debates. So now in this second panel, we will dive into practical strategies for implementation at the country level, at regional level. Many of you in the first panel already touched upon some of these topics. So now we'll look at it more concretely in the second panel. And I'm very pleased to welcome Mr. Dr. Tilman Fleur, who is Chief Technical Officer and co-founder of the Everwave technology, as well as Ms. Liviana Zorzi, who is a specialist at the National Plastic Action Partnership of the World Economic Forum, Dr. Randika Jayasingh, who is a plastic and waste specialist from the Center for Sustainable Development Reform from the University of New South Wales, and also was part of the delegation of Sri Lanka during the negotiations this year. And last but not least, Mr. Rocky Pairunan, who is a manager for Ocean and Plastic Waste Program of the World Resources Institute, but also linked a bit to Liliana, is the lead of the Secretariat of the Indonesia National Plastic Action Partnership. So I would like to first perhaps look at this National Plastic Action Partnership, perhaps first from a global perspective, and I'll ask for some questions to Liviana before maybe diving in at the national level with Rocky, and then also looking at data with Randika. It's a question that came up in the first panel, and then closing up with Timan with a note on innovation and an answer that you promised as well on AI. So perhaps to complement a bit the answer given by Feng Wang. So Liviana, we have been hearing that this plastic pollution problem really requires a system change scenario with comprehensive interventions along the entire plastic value chain with upstream and downstream measures. So in your opinion, can countries and companies cope with this challenge? Can they really do it? And what measures and incentives would be needed for this to happen?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Elodie, and all the previous speakers. It has been really interesting to get your input. And indeed, I also agree on the fact that the result of a latest INC 5.2 negotiation doesn't have to discourage us or to stop us, because action is still ongoing on the ground, and actually this should be pushing us to do even further. So with the Global Plastic Action Partnership, this is an initiative that was launched in 2018, and we work over these 5 years to bring on board 25 countries. So the 25th country actually came on board at the beginning of this year in January. This is an initiative that works with developing countries, and we have almost a well-balanced number of countries across the regions of Latin America, Africa, and Asia. And in Asia in particular, which is also the focus of this webinar, we have opened the local or national chapters, normally called National Plastic Action Partnership, such as the one that Rocky represents for Indonesia. We open in 8 countries, so Indonesia, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos PDR, Philippines, and also Bangladesh, Pakistan, and the state of Maharashtra. This is where we are present. And the way in which we operate is, first of all, to support in setting up a multi-stakeholder local steering board. So we will have, of course, the government that normally takes the lead on this. That is followed and let's say supported by private sector, businesses, and civil society. And what we notice also is that we want to found this kind of partnership on data and evidence. So in all the countries where we are present, we have produced or we are producing a national plastic action roadmap that is based on data collection on what is the current situation of plastic production, plastic flows, and especially plastic waste generation and management in the country, and what can be some future scenarios in terms of business as usual or a system change scenario. And when we talk about system change scenario, as also some of the other speakers indicated, it's really important to look at the different perspective and at what different actors can make. So for sure, the policy and regulatory landscape is really very important. It's sometimes what triggered the initial action also from the business. But it's very important also to support an environment where businesses can test some solutions, can collaborate. What we have seen in our NPAPs is also the opportunity by bringing these people together to create partnership and maybe pilot some solutions that involve both the multinational companies that many times have even more resources to bring into that, together with startups or SMEs and small medium enterprises that maybe focus on a specific solution. And this solution can be really very different and looking at various status of the plastic value chain. So started from maybe improvements in the design, in a better recyclability, to maybe decision of a material to use, whether it's plastic, is a bioplastic, is a totally alternative material. Trying, for example, also to pilot some reuse models where, for example, maybe in partnership with multinational companies such as Unilever, the sachet, the multi-layer plastic sachet, have been replaced with smaller reusable containers. And maybe working in some of the countries with the local community, the community of waste pickers, and also testing approaches that look at waste pickers and turn them into reuse ambassadors, where they would not go, from house to house to simply pick up the waste, but also they can actually pick some reusable containers to bring them back to reuse center. These are some of the initiatives that we have been seeing, for example. Another aspect that I want to share is, of course, the importance of the funding and unlocking financing, both at the public level, but also from the private sector, and blended finance is what will allow also these models that, as also Feng shared in many times, remain for too long at the, let's say, at a prototype or, at a testing model, to help them to further scale. So, for example, the Global Plastic Action Partnership, and in general the Forum, in partnership with other organizations such as UNEP or the World Bank, have recently worked on a financing coordination group that works at global level and is trying also to work more at regional level to connect and give visibilities to some of these local, or regional initiatives, and try to also, bring them to a global fora that can also inspire those maybe solutions and decisions that then can be taken, hopefully also in the context of a global agreement. So I think also Tobias was mentioning also the importance of sharing, let's say, getting inspiration for the global agreement from solutions that already exist. So what we do with our initiatives is also trying to help give visibility to this kind of initiatives and share across countries and across regions. So I'll stop here for the time being.
Thank you so much, Liviana. And now I'd like to ask a similar question to Rocky, but for you to explain to us how these measures and incentives can really help transform the system at national level, and give us maybe an overview of this NPAP in Indonesia, and what are you doing at local level that can really then support a more harmonized legislation globally.
Yeah, thank you, Elodie. As elaborated by Liviana earlier, that NPAP was formed to convene multi-stakeholders at the national level. So here in Indonesia, we have in our platform, the communities consist of industries coming from the upstream, the petrochemicals.
Excuse me, Rocky, to interrupt. I was wondering if you could get closer to the mic. Your
Okay.
sound is quite low, just so make sure that everyone can hear you.
Okay, how about now?
Sorry. Bit better.
Okay.
I can see others nodding.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm
thank
sorry.
you. No worries.
Yes.
No, I just want to make sure you can be heard, because it's very interesting what you have to say. Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry for that.
Yeah, I think I try to repeat the call it, the information that I earlier said. In Indonesia, NPAP consists of as a platform to convene multi-stakeholders. Our communities, we don't want to say members, mostly communities, consist of government entities, from industry, from environment, from national planning development, and also even from Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries. And then we have communities coming from industrial groups, from the upstream industry, the petrochemicals, and then also from the converter and brand owner, and as well as the waste collection actors, and also NGOs. So it represents various interests in they call it, in the issue for addressing plastic pollution. Of course, it's really interesting to understand the dynamics, the dialogue, especially when it comes to position towards the regulation that is being developed, particularly when to also when we capture their position towards the global plastic treaty. In terms of regulatory development in Indonesia, NPAP is tasked to basically convene non-state actors, particularly industries, on how extended producer responsibility for packaging can be strengthened. We have the regulation under Ministry of Environment that is still ongoing and applied, but it is not effective in terms of implementation. The ministry would like to strengthen the mechanism, try to simplify the process, the mechanisms, so the industry can how do you call it, the industry can participate and comply with this regulation. So yes, again, setting up the ecosystem by how to implement this EPR through the collective system, through PRO. Of course, it requires a discussion and consultation with the industry. To what extent that PRO is the role of PRO, taking into account the waste collection system at municipal level, and then taking into account the wide area of coverage in Indonesia. So this kind of discussion is currently ongoing, because again, the post the INC 5.2, the government is working to strengthen the regulation, especially on the waste management, especially on EPR for plastic packaging, and then also the commitment from the government that NPAP should be able to facilitate the monitoring of plastic pollution, potential plastic pollution, and then also the existing plastic pollution through how do you call it, through collaborative actions. So for instance, like we identified that there are some actors, some organizations have already implemented waste monitoring system utilizing like aerial photographies or CCTVs, and many others. They have their own algorithms to basically detect potential plastic pollution or existing plastic pollution. That could be something that can be synchronized under collaborative action, and then feed the government to, let's say, to take action based on the information that is provided. This is something that also mandated to NPAP to work on. On top of that, there are a lot of how do you call it, financial necessity that is required to basically to transform, or during this transition period for Indonesia. At the moment, according to the calculation, at least 300 trillion is needed only for the capital expenditure to improve the waste management system. Of course, for the operational cost, it will be more than that. And then it requires the non-state actor to be able to finance the waste collection system. And this is something that is also required for NPAP to be able to convene actors to see how non-state actors funding mobilization can be channeled to this project at the local level. So this is something that still being worked on post the INC 5.2, and this is I call it huge milestone for us, and of course with the support of the actors, stakeholders in Indonesia and governments, we are optimistic that this can be implemented.
Thank you so much, Rocky. It must be quite an endeavor to be the secretariat, the lead of the secretariat of the NPAP in Indonesia. It must be a very challenging task. Thank you for this explanation. And now I'd like to turn to Dr. Randika Jayasingh, who is a specialist at the Center for Sustainable Development Platform of the University of New South Wales, and also was part of the delegation of Sri Lanka at the recent negotiations. Hello, Randika.
Hi, Elodie. Thank you so much. Can you hear me well?
Oh, I hear you well. Thank you. Sorry for Rocky again for previously. Great. And Randika, thank you very much for joining us. And I want to ask you a question about a topic that's been coming up quite a lot. It's data. So really, data is fundamental to addressing plastic pollution. And Ms. Dinara was mentioning it, the need for monitoring. Rocky mentioned it as well now. Why is it essential to policymakers, and what are the challenges that are faced by countries in bringing up this data? It was also one of the, I believe, one of the questions that we received from a gentleman working in Myanmar, and he also, I thought his question was very interesting because he raised the point of informal waste and how that can be measured by informal workers. I mean, with all the informality around this waste. But also, if you could let us know, what are the solutions to capture this data across the entire plastics value chain? The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Elodie. I'll try to answer it as quickly and concise as possible with the time limit.
You don't worry too much. I invite our listeners to please start typing your questions in the Q&A box or in the chat, and you don't have to worry too much about the time, Randika. Neither Tilman. We'll take them as they go when they pop in.
Thanks, Elodie. I think I'm really glad that the previous panelists highlight the importance of data. I think the data is, I mean, we all of us know that data is the foundation of everything we do in plastic governance. Like, to put it very simply, we cannot manage what we cannot measure. So robust plastic data serves fundamental purposes for policymakers. I'll highlight 3 points. First, it enables evidence-based decision making. And I have seen this over and over again in Sri Lanka. So when governments want to expand or implement, let's say, single-use plastic bans, they need data showing which products have the highest environmental impact and whether there are viable alternatives. So without these type of data and information, policies become shots in the dark. I mean, you cannot really have reliable or policies that will deliver better outcomes if you don't have the data and the decisions were made just based on the popular thought, the popular ideas. Second, data allows countries to track progress and demonstrate impact. This is very crucial in attracting international funding for countries like Sri Lanka. Donors want quantifiable outcomes, and we need to be able to show progress and the impact. So when we can show that, for example, plastic bag usage dropped, let's say, 80% after a ban, that's powerful evidence for continued support. Third, and I think the most important point, is that data is essential for international commitments. Let's take the UN Global Plastic Treaty negotiations as an example. Once it's finalized, and hopefully it will be finalized at some point, countries will have to report on plastic data, plastic flows. And for us to do that, the countries will need to have reliable data. Maybe it's in another 5 or 6 or 7 years' time, but if countries start now developing their data systems, then they'll be in a very good position to report these data once that requirement comes up. So looking at the challenges from my work in Sri Lanka and across the region, and also our work in the Pacific, I see major challenges. One is the infrastructure gaps. Many countries still lack basic waste characterization facilities. We talk about source separation all the time, but in many countries we see that it still needs to improve, and we need to encourage the communities, the local authorities to do it better. In some places we work with the officials how to conduct waste audits, because they have never systematically measured plastic flows. It's just based on the truckload, basically looking at the truckload and saying, okay, the truck is full, so it's 1 ton of 1 ton of waste, and out of this a certain percentage is plastic waste, not really systematically measuring how much is generated in their municipalities. The second challenge that I see is data sits in silos. In some countries, different ministries, different line agencies own their data, and there's no communication between these agencies, and there's no communication sometimes with these agencies and the statistics departments, national statistics departments. And then there's a third group, the industry associations. Sometimes they don't share the data with the governments. So we have spent months in some countries that we work just mapping who holds what data. So that takes time. So data is in fragmented, I would say it's a fragmented system. Data is everywhere. The other challenge that I've seen is capacity constraints. Countries need trained personnel, standardized methodologies, harmonized methodologies, because sometimes countries use different methodologies to collect data, and not just personnel or methodologies, even funding. I have seen situations where only 2 or 3 people manage the data in a ministry, and if they are pulled into other work, then that work stops. There's nothing happens beyond that project or beyond that initiative. And the other thing is, again, I know that GPAP is doing a lot of work in this area with their National Action Plan projects. The producers or the private sector guard some of the data as commercially sensitive, and I understand that. But without mandatory reporting frameworks, we rely on estimates and voluntary disclosures. There's no reliable data, and which creates massive data gaps in developing countries. I have seen sometimes the same companies reporting data in other parts of the world. For example, the same companies reporting
Randika?
disclosures, not mandatory. So
No, sorry, maybe it was my system, but there was a pause. Please carry on.
Yeah, so my final point in that is these gaps have serious consequences, because without reliable baselines, countries cannot set realistic reduction targets. They cannot design effective EPR schemes or even access finance tied to measurable outcomes. So I think data is really important, and I really appreciate all the work on national plastic data systems and inventories in many different forms. It's so critical. We are not just collecting numbers, we are building the foundation to actually develop evidence-based policy and actually address the plastic at the source. In 2 minutes, I'll talk about the solutions. We at the Center for Sustainable Development Reform, we have developed these are tools that we have developed to work in the countries in the projects that we do. One is a plastic data checklist, a very simple data checklist where the governments can go through the checklist and see what data is available for them and what data is missing. They can also, there's a traffic light system for them to identify or for them to assess whether the data is reliable or not. Sometimes the data, they can say that the data is available, but the data is not reliable, and that type of data is not going to generate any useful income. And the second one is a plastic data tracker. We have collected all the available information, whatever information that's available, and we have created this data tracker to see what countries are producing what data. So if you look at the plastic data tracker, if you just search it online, it will come up. You can see that through the Comtrade databases, most of the import-export data are available, but when it comes to what is leaking into the environment or the waste, there is a lot of data gaps. And the final one is a data collection handbook. This is not new information. This is information that's already available. Methodologies already used in different places. We have collated them into one handbook so that the countries can see across the life cycle what methodologies that different countries or organizations have used to collect data. And it's like a handbook that they can use to collect, like a how-to-do guide that builds local capacity. And I'm more than happy to share these resources with anyone interested later. But thank you so much, Elodie, and I think I answered that both questions.
Thank you so much, Monica. Yes, it was very interesting. You certainly brought the importance of data to my mind and the challenges to get it right. I imagine this is a new type of accounting that will flourish in the coming years, or I hope so, if legislation strengthens. Thank you so much. And now I'd like to ask some questions to Dr. Tilman Fleur, who is the CTO and founder of Everwave. And hello, Tilman, welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction and invitation to speak here. It's a great opportunity.
Well, we're very happy to have you. And I wanted to ask you, from your maybe more practical experience through your technical solution, what do you think are the actions that would be needed at a local level to really move towards a more harmonized legislation? And also, the question that we heard previously, what would be the role of artificial intelligence, and how could it assist at both local and global levels to guide, induce, and really support transformative change? Thank you, Tilman.
Yeah, from a practical and business perspective, I would definitely recommend to have sustainable business models. I believe if we can establish business models all along the value chain from the beginning of from product design to reuse models down to waste management infrastructure, I believe we will not just solve the problem, but also create value. Of course, there are certain problems connected with that, and one of the major one is reliable funding. So we see grants, but I also would really recommend that we look deeper in terms of an international plastic treaty into funding mechanisms like blended finance. We at Everwave work with plastic credits. We use them because we see them as a bottom-up approach, and that they eventually can funnel into national EPR systems. They might take years, but we are currently able to build the infrastructure that is needed in a couple of years. So I believe reliable funding, business models is very essential, and of course networks and knowledge sharing. So the Switch Asia program is a great opportunity. We have the Prevent Waste Alliance, which is coordinated by GIZ in Germany, and we have to share best practices, organize matchmakings, and discuss the core topics, learn from each other. I believe there are so many amazing organizations out there, and they have so many great ideas and innovations, and sometimes they just need to be heard and need the right support. That's probably to the first question, and according to the second, I definitely have to say that I totally love what the speakers before said. Radhika, your passion according to data, I fully support that. Unless we collect reliable data, we are basically blind. We don't know where we're going, what we're doing. So one of the biggest problems to solve the international plastic crisis is still the lack of data, and what we need is data that is available and data that is reliable, and we need it for informed decision making. And I believe that artificial intelligence is a powerful tool to do so. It can help to generate data, and it can help to analyze the data to draw conclusions. Just to give you an example, I've been working with other organizations in the so-called Plastic Ops project funded by the Federal Ministry for the Environment in Germany. And what we did is we used cameras on drones and on airplanes to basically monitor waste hotspots in the environment. And the aim was to create heat maps and to understand where is the waste, how much is out there, what's the composition, and then draw conclusions from that. How can we remove the waste? But probably most important, how can we prevent it? What are the necessary legislations that need to come into place, for example, to prevent plastic bags to enter the environment? Where do we need more infrastructure and so on? And connected with that, coming back to data, I would also say it's very crucial to have harmonized data. We've talked about the lack of data. It's not accessible, but even if we have data that is accessible, it still needs to be comparable. So if we gather data in Germany and gather data in Cambodia and it's not comparable, then it's not really of worth. So we also have to address that topic. I believe UNEP, the Global Partnership for Marine Litter, is doing a great job in that perspective. And data is required in so many places, and AI is a very, very powerful tool to support us in there, not just in the waste monitoring, but also in the design of new products that's basically the summary.
Thank you so much, Chinmanwe. It's really interesting to see how technology can complement the initiatives already taking place, and with a little bit of funding, of public funding, and hopefully also private investment, then the solutions can be found. Yes. Thank you so much.
May I add one more
Yes,
thing?
of course, please do.
What Radhika said earlier, I have to totally agree that we have to share more data, and we have to synchronize the data. I believe that one of the major problems is that data is wanted all over the world, but the worth of the data is not really seen. So there is not a really big sense or large hesitation to actually pay for the data. So that's what I was saying earlier. You can create business models. I think Rocky said it earlier. We have small startups in Indonesia tracking data through CCTVs, which is a great way to do it. But you can only sustain the action and sustain the gathering of data if you create business model that makes it worth. And I believe all the organizations would be willing to share the information, because I mean, it still takes time and money and resources to actually do that. That's my pledge for data.
Thank you, Tilman. And I see that Randika is raising her hand. Maybe you'd like to answer to that intervention.
Not to really answer, but I think I missed one point. One of the other challenges in our region is that there is a big informal sector that is very active. And we have experienced in Sri Lanka that it's very difficult to collect data in the informal sector, or at least the government is not paying enough attention because there are so many informal sectors and it's difficult to collect data. And it's not just in Sri Lanka. I know that this is the same across the region. And we really need to look at better ways or how best we could work with the informal sector to collect these really valuable data and use that in our decision making. Just wanted to highlight that.
Yes, thank you. There was one of the comments, as I said, from Myanmar highlighting a little bit the same problem. Thank you very much, panelists, for all these interventions. It was really interesting. We still have a bit of time for some questions from our attendants, participants. Would there be further questions? No, I don't see more questions. I think you gave a lot of answers already. Maybe I will ask Arab if he sees an opportunity maybe to ask a follow-up questions to some of these panelists. Arab?
I'm fine. I mean, I have already asked each one of them 2 questions, but I'm okay with that.
Okay. So very good. So I'll leave the floor then perhaps to our team leader, Dr. Zenaida Fadeva, if you'd like to give some reflections about this webinar, Zenaida.
Thank you, colleagues. And well, it's extremely difficult to summarize such a wealth of exchanges, but well, even though many of us are in this field for, if not years, for decades, every time in the course of such exchange, we have clearly learned or being reminded a great deal. And in this case, it's not an exception from the looking at the arguments around the weak treaty versus no treaty, and from recognizing that plastic pollution, like any environmental problem, is also fundamentally human rights issue. Thank you very much for reminding us about that. And it affects the rights to health, the right to clean environment, the rights of future generations. But actually, not only for the future generations, so the future, not necessarily cleanest and most of the prosperous of the future is already upon us. And this framing certainly deepens the urgency of our work. So that was a very good, strong reminder about urgency. And as we close, let us remember that plastics are not just a waste management issue. They sit at the heart of the triple planetary crisis. Again, thank you very much, Mr. Wang. I think Feng Wang mentioned this again. So plastics are fossil based and contribute directly to the climate change. Ms. Pinky, thank you very much for making this connection. Again, we know about that, but it came very prominently in your discussion. And they are, through this link, a driver of pollution on land and rivers and oceans, and also threaten biodiversity and human health through toxicity and microplastics, which have been a very strong part of the negotiations, but appears to be not having sufficient resonance for having this strong treaty. This means our solutions must move decisively upstream, and many of you have pointed it. We need to focus on design, how products, how plastics are conceived, how materials are chosen, and how business models are structured. And that requires serious investment in innovation. Again, colleagues, you were talking about innovation, not only as an alternative material, investment in the alternative materials, but also in the new business models for reuse, refill, repair, service-based delivery. So it's really about extending the life of the material and component, plastic component in products and through service deliveries in the production consumption cycle. So recycling has a role, of course, but it has its limits. We all know it, and you have been speaking about this. Downcycling, leakage, energy intensity remind us that prevention and redesign are really, or elimination of the material where it could be eliminated, are really the true engines of transformation. At the same time, we need to create market pool. Some questions also in the chat were pointing indirectly towards that. Circular solutions will not spread if the market doesn't demand them. Dinara has been actually speaking about, very interestingly, that in the position of Kazakhstan, circular economy comes really in relation to the plastic negotiation, and we know its position of Kazakhstan also in the climate discussions. So green public procurement is one of the strongest levers for the governments to have probably here, sending very clear signal that safety, durability, and circularity will be rewarded in relation to any material, including the plastics. So we should also broaden our lens beyond packaging alone. Again, colleagues, you have been talking about this, Mr. Wang, reminding us plastics are embedded in textile, construction, agricultural sector activity, and looking across this wider system opens new opportunity for innovation and impact. Critically, in relation to this, we must speak more directly about financing. The challenge is not only whether businesses are ready for investment, but also how we can mobilize the financing sector. We didn't speak about this, but this is one of the very important issues, linking plastics to climate finance and related mechanisms. You were speaking about this is one of the clearest opportunities here. Plastics are fossil intensive, 99%, as Pinky mentioned to us, so reducing them directly supports climate mitigation. And alternatives and circular systems strengthen adaptation and resilience. So climate funds, blending finance, green bonds can and probably should become instruments much more stronger for plastic solutions. But financing alone will not be enough unless it is backed by robust MRV, management reporting and verification systems. So our last two speakers have been speaking very profoundly about that. Without credible data on plastic use, leakage, circular alternatives, commitments remain just promises on paper, and strong MRV systems give us also evidence to track progress and also channel investments more effectively. So again, thank you for reminding us about this. Finally, what gives us a ground of optimism is more nuanced understanding. And of course, colleagues during the first part of our webinar have been speaking about that. It's more nuanced understanding that we have reached now. Clear perspective of national positions, deeper recognition of the challenges, and really expanding host of solutions already in practice. This shared awareness, of course, is a powerful lever to build on, but also to increase it across territories and across the sectors. Last example of Indonesia, Ricky has been speaking about. So, to finish, as we move forward, let us keep the essential levers in mind, which you spoke about this, and more fine determined ones: upstream design and innovation, trade, market rules, links to climate finance, robust monitoring and verification systems, market pools through procurement, broader sectoral solutions, strategic investment, and much more broader partnership on management. So together, it could eventually lead to stronger agreement when the time is right. But of course, all of us and Switch Asia look forward to working together with all of you towards this goal. Thank you very much for your contribution today, colleagues.
Thank you very much, Anaida. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you
Bye.
very much. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.